Hello, my name's Trudy Žagare and I'm an independent trainer and consultant. I'm also on the board of BritCham. So before, when I lived in the UK, I've been here in Latvia for 16 years, I had a proper job. So I worked for British Airways and mostly in the commercial area and did a lot of negotiation. As you know, anyone in a management position will be negotiating with trade unions, with new staff for salaries, negotiating for your budget, or perhaps with external suppliers and so on. During that time though, I did actually have a full-time negotiating role, which lasted for 2 or 3 years. I was responsible for negotiating contracts with large corporate customers, so the usual suspects, banks, pharma, government organisations and so on, who literally spent millions of pounds on British Airways on flying around the world during a year. I also negotiated our contracts with large travel agencies who gave us a lot of business. So these contracts were literally worth millions of pounds. The negotiations were extremely stressful. I was often out of my comfort zone, but I learned so much from doing it. Later, I moved away from working kind of on the front line and actually went into the area of training and development. So I managed commercial training for BA for a while, and that involved a lot of specifically sales, commercial, negotiating workshops for our offices all across the world. And from that, it was then easy when I moved to Latvia to set myself up as an independent trainer and consultant. And during the last 16 years, I've run a lot of negotiating workshops across the world. So what we'll be focusing on is some of the principles, some practical tips and techniques, because I really like when I run a workshop that people leave with some practical things that they can do next time they're in a negotiation. Specifically though, we'll also be looking at, I'd say, three key themes. The first one is managing your own mindset and your own emotions both before and during negotiation. I already kind of alluded to the fact that negotiation can be really stressful. We can feel a lot of emotions, so it might be fear, anxiety, it might also be excitement. Imagine yourself negotiating buying your first house or apartment. There's a lot of excitement in it as well. But it's really important that we manage that before we get into the negotiation, because if the other party gets inside your head and suspects that you're feeling nervous or anxious, they can exploit that. So we'll talk about some strategies for how do you manage your own mindset so that you manage and control your emotions instead of letting them control you. One of the things that really helps, which links to our next theme, is preparation. So the more prepared you are, quite simply, the less anxious you are likely to be because you've really done your homework. And the things that you really need to understand are, what do I need to achieve for my organisation or for myself? What can I live with? And what's my walkaway position? So you are absolutely clear at what point the negotiation finishes, because it's not going to be good for you or your organisation. And that's something that inexperienced negotiators very often go in and haven't really thought through. At what point do I need to walk away? But also, what point do I need to start at in order to get to my desired outcome? So that is all about preparation. And I think the third theme that we'll touch on is connected to the idea of win-win negotiation. So everyone's heard the words, but it's how do you make it reality and not just a cliche? And to do that, it comes back to really good questioning and listening skills, because you really need to understand what's important to the other party so you can help them achieve that. So I think those are the kind of key themes. The other thing I'd like participants to anticipate is that it'll be very interactive. So we've got some really fun exercises. We'll get people doing things, practicing things. And the big thinking here is, if you practice in a safe environment, a classroom, it's better than practicing in front of your customer. So that's the theory. Above all, we want people to have fun, to learn something, and actually to meet some new people as well. But actually, negotiation is so broad now. You know, any manager will be negotiating salaries with people, contracts with people, probably with some outside suppliers, and so on and so on. And to be frank, if you think about what happens at home, we are negotiating all the time. So I'd say primarily people who are negotiating, but actually it's a general management skill as well. But we will certainly talk about some of the things specifically that Brits might expect. So certainly at the beginning of a negotiation, we might spend some time talking about the weather, even though our weather is obviously completely dull and boring and never does anything extreme. But the purpose of talking about the weather is actually to relax people, because it's a safe topic before you start talking about something that can actually be quite confrontational. So we might touch on some small small tips and techniques that might help you understand why Brits do what they do. I think that those cultural nuances and differences are critical in the area of communication. Now, obviously, communication is a part of negotiation, but our second workshop is all about building effective business relationships. And we'll talk a lot about communication and specifically exploring where Brits and Latvians sit on some dimensions around communication. And we'll be teasing that out on workshop 2.